Imagine, what if I came to your house, which is a house you and your family live in since your grandparents for hundreds of years, and I asked you to leave with guns in my hands. Why I'm asking you to leave? Because my book tells me that this house is mine since thousands of years. And actually you have no option except leaving, because if you didn't, I'll probably blow you up. So most of your family will go down, staying all around the house, down the street, very angry for almost 60 years, and some stay in the house in the partitioned part which I designed for them, and they don't have equal access to water and electricity like I and my people do. And then when your people who are down the street throw some rocks on my house, which used to be your house, I reply back with RBJs and F-16s. And that's a self-defense. How would you feel if you were these people who were kicked out? That's exactly what happened in Palestine. Very simply, of course, but this could be briefly what happened in Palestine. Jumping off history, there's so many information beside this story that you need to know. Did you know that Gaza is considered the biggest open-air prison in the world, hosting almost 1.7 million? Most of them are refugees since 1948 in a land not bigger than 25 by 7 miles. You know that in Gaza, almost 59% of the fathers, 79% of the mothers, and 92% of the children are traumatized because of the war. Did you know that most of the families in Gaza live with only $3 a day or less? Did you know that Israel have made a blockade on Gaza, controlling its air, land and water, where they are blocked from both sides, they cannot ship, and they don't have any airports that can let them in or out or trades in or out, making 40% of the population unemployed. Also, they go under power outrage for almost 12 hours a day. Did you know, along with the many houses and schools and hospitals that got damaged through the war on Gaza, in the blockade, cement and steel are not allowed to enter Gaza, which makes it very hard to rebuild and do a good infrastructure in Gaza. And did you know that on the other side of the Palestinian land, which is the West Bank, there is the apartheid wall, which supposedly separates Israel from the West Bank.
I came across the wall by accident, really. We were driving in a UN car, and I told them that I'd like to see the wall, and I thought we still had a long way to go. And then we got to the end of this road and they said, "This is the wall." I look up and this wall cuts right through a main road that goes through the city. And so the road just ends abruptly at that wall, and next to this road is a farm, and all the farmers left of this farm is this small section of land that isn't bigger than what you see behind me here. And it's very clear that his land goes beyond that, and there's so much more that was taking place beyond that. And the wall, I mean, it's not just like a physical sense, it's an emotional sense for much more than just a separation of land between Palestine and Israel. Even the wall itself is a platform upon which a lot of the Palestinian protests take place. You see these graffiti all along the wall, this wall that really shows that the Palestinian people are very vocal, very verbal about a lot of the oppression that they're living under, and all it takes is a look at this wall.
Israel built this wall supposedly for security purposes, to separate Israel from the West Bank. It should have been built on the Israeli borders, but instead 85% of it was built on Palestinian land, eating up a land as big as the size of the city of Chicago to the Israel. Our lands under the International Court of Justice is illegal.
Did you know that in the West Bank, which is supposedly the sovereign land for Palestinians, over 1% of the Palestinian land in the West Bank is taken over by over 200 Israeli settlements? and those Israeli settlers living in those settlements are under Israeli civil law, whereas the Palestinians living in any other area in the West Bank are under military law, which includes curfews and being accounted in checkpoints. And in those checkpoints, that's something I went through when I was going from the West Bank into Israeli land. And it's the humiliation that you undergo in these checkpoints is something I felt even as an American, so I can't even imagine what the Palestinians feel. I mean, it makes you behave in a way that's precisely what they want. It's rocks against missiles, it's rocks against something so much more powerful than you.
But now after we knew what I and you could do as university students.
So there's a movement called the Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions Movement, or BDS for short. It's an international movement, and students all around the world, including in the United States. Different ways in which you can get involved are, for example, supporting consumer boycotts of products such as SodaStream, which until recently was produced on an illegal settlement in the West Bank, and other consumer products that are complicit in profiting from the occupation, as well as supporting the academic boycott of Israeli academic institutions that are also complicit in the occupation. Besides that, students across the country have been supporting divestment campaigns, which essentially calls for their universities to remove their funding and investments in companies profiting from the occupation. For example, Caterpillar, which supplies bulldozers and other equipment to help destroy Palestinian olive trees, homes, and to construct illegal settlements in the West Bank. And other companies that are producing surveillance drones and weaponry that allows the Israeli military to suppress Palestinians. Besides that, as citizens, as voters, you can call on your elected officials to support sanctions, especially military sanctions, and cutting off of the $3 billion of aid the U.S. gives to Israel every year in order to pressure Israel to recognize international law and respect the human rights of Palestinians. So, BDS, Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions.
You know, as an American, I would never want to go into Israel again just because of I mean, I wasn't really scared, but just like the humiliation, like you being subjected to a certain position, and this constant reminder of what position you are in. At any moment of time, they can stop anyone they want on these checkpoints, and if your attire or if your behavior was something that they felt uncomfortable from, then they felt free to shoot at you. I mean, so many times. But is it really different from what you see like in America with cops shooting black people all the time from them not looking a certain way that they should be looking in, or behaving a certain way that they should be behaving in? So, I mean, you see the same thing taking place on our land.